Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to another episode of TFiR Let's Talk here at KubeCon in Detroit. And today we have with us Kendall Nelson, Senior Upstream Developer Advocate at OpenInfra Foundation. Kendall, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here today.
What are you doing at KubeCon? You're from the OpenInfra Foundation, so talk a bit about your presence.
OpenStack has long been thought to be at odds with Kubernetes, but they're actually very compatible softwares because you need to run your Kubernetes cluster somewhere. And OpenStack has become a key layer in that stack. We've actually, in our most recent user survey from this year, 2022, we saw that I think 85% of OpenStack deployments actually have Kubernetes running on top of them. So it really shows how well the two integrate together to say that many people and companies are using the two.
Talk a bit about the work that is already been going on for a while, because in the end, you folks are actually solving the problem of the users, which could be the big telcos, or it could be, whoever it is. So talk about that.
There are so many different ways that OpenStack and Kubernetes are being used together in a lot of different industries, like you were saying, research, you have telcos, automotive industry, like all kinds of different contexts. And there are a lot of different ways that the two technologies also integrate. And that's one of the things that I've been focused on a lot over the last 2 or 3 years, is making sure that our communities are connected. And we do that in a lot of different ways. So just last week, we had our OpenInfra Foundation's project team gathering, which is a bunch of technical discussions amongst our project teams. And we invited the Kubernetes steering committee to come and join us there. And we had 2 members participate in the OpenStack technical committee discussions, and we shared a lot of knowledge with one another about pain points, things that we've had to overcome together in terms of like elections and community management. There are a lot of common threads between our two communities because we're both global open source communities, and we have a lot to learn from each other. But there are a lot of technical integrations as well. Within the Kubernetes community, you have SIG Cloud Provider, and that is home to the provider OpenStack, which has all of the different plugins for like the Manila and Cinder cloud storage integration plugins. And there are so many different ways that they integrate. And then more specifically on like the OpenStack side, you have deployment tools like Kola Ansible and OpenStack Helm that all help you get your Kubernetes infrastructure up and running on an OpenStack cloud. And man, the list goes on. And there's so many different touch points, and it's a lot of coordination, but it's definitely one of my favorite parts of my job.
When you look at these two communities, 2 projects, both open source, both backed by neutral foundations, do you draw any parallel, and where you can also see, hey, you know what? This is how there are similarities, and this is the lessons Kubernetes can learn from the OpenStack community, or the OpenStack community can learn some lessons from the Kubernetes.
Yeah, so I have found this really interesting because I started attending KubeCon and Cloud Native Con a few years ago now, and I just remember sitting in, listening to their like steering committee Ask Me Anything sessions, and being like, "This is a conversation we had in OpenStack like maybe a year ago at most." And it was just like being able to see how similar the communities are has been a little bit funny. And I know for a long time there were like so many people that had left the OpenStack community a long time ago and like helped get the Kubernetes community started, and there was a lot of like antagonistic sort of like, oh well, we don't want to be like OpenStack. But communities at the scale that OpenStack and Kubernetes and the Linux kernel have a lot of common threads and follow the same like Gartner hype curve. And I actually wrote an article about that recently, and it was published on the New Stack, about how Kubernetes has definitely made it past that, what's it called? The peak of inflated expectation or something. And they're now on like the trough of disillusionment and working on their slope of enlightenment. And I don't think it's anything to be like ashamed of. Like Kubernetes is still a very thriving community, same as OpenStack, same as Linux kernel. They're getting more stable and having to figure out how to kind of streamline, but I think every open source community goes through that to one degree or another. And it just really depends on the size of the community, how tumultuous that might be. But I think that doing things like going to each other's events, us OpenStack folks going to Kubernetes events and Kubernetes people coming to OpenStack events is really the best way to make that an easy transition and get to a really healthy, stable, maybe not glamorous and shiny anymore space, but still a really healthy one.
Talk a bit about, we used to talk about thousands of cores, CERN and all those folks are running back in those days. I mean, that which is still the case. So just give us the state of OpenStack.
Yeah, we've actually seen explosive growth in terms of usage of OpenStack. From last year to this year, our user survey showed an increase from 25 million cores running in production globally to over 40 million cores running in production globally. So OpenStack is far from dead, far from it. It's really cool to see new use cases continuing to crop up. I mentioned a couple earlier, like the automotive, and you have telcos, obviously, have really embraced OpenStack. I think most of the major telcos in the world are using it in one way or another. You continue to see it used in research projects like CERN and the Square Kilometer Array. It's really cool to be a part of something being used in those contexts. But the growth continues to happen into different industries. We're seeing steps forward in hybrid cloud and a resurgence of public cloud. And OpenStack is there at every step of the journey.
Let's talk about the latest release of OpenStack, which was Z, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
It came out recently. So talk about some of the features, functionalities, improvements.
Yeah. The OpenStack release, we just had the Z release at the beginning of October. 26 releases, crazy. I never thought that I would be around to see the end of the alphabet when I started working on OpenStack during Liberty. But this most recent release, we actually added 2 new projects, 2 new services. One of them is called Venus, and it's all about logging. It's kind of your one-stop shop aggregation for all the different types of logs and being able to manipulate and process and looking at them in different ways. So it's really user focused and definitely helps operators diagnosing issues and just keeping tabs on how their clouds are running. The other new project that we added is called Skyline, and it is actually considered a tech preview at this point. So it's definitely ready to be played around with, and the team really wants feedback, but I wouldn't recommend using it in production quite yet. It is actually a modern dashboard. So it was created alongside of Horizon, which is our legacy dashboard, but it's been built with newer technologies and is more focused on parallel usage and general updated technology and optimization. So it's very exciting to see new things coming into OpenStack too. We're still going, still moving forward. Now we're back to A again.
Kendall, thank you so much in taking time out today and talk about OpenStack. As I said, I love the community. I would love to start going back to your events because your folks,
Yeah.
I still remember the Austin party, and it was one of the craziest, parties there. But I really appreciate your time today and sitting down with me. Give us an update on the community. The project is growth, and it's still, just like kernel, mainframe, Kubernetes, around and doing, it's powering a lot of infrastructure in the world. So thanks for sharing those insights. And as I said, let's do this more often.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk, and I really do hope to see you in Vancouver at our upcoming summit in June.